All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that honestly feels like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but is tragically, chillingly real. We're talking about the vanishing of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. Picture this. It's March 8th, 2014. A state-of-the-art Boeing 777 takes off into the night sky, and less than an hour later, it literally ceases to exist on radar screens. Over a decade has passed since that night, and we're still left staring at the single most baffling, unresolved mystery in the history of modern aviation. Just read those words. Good night, Malaysian 370. They are so remarkably, almost frustratingly mundane, right? This was the final radio sign-off from the cockpit to air traffic control. The pilot's voice was completely calm, the message was totally routine, and everything appeared absolutely normal. It's a chilling reminder of just how ordinary this flight was right up until the exact moment it wasn't. No panic, no distress call, just a polite sign-off into the dark. But before we get lost in the data, the radar arcs, and the ocean currents, we have to talk about this number, 239. That's the number of passengers and crew who were on board that flight to Beijing. We can never lose sight of the staggering human stakes here. These were 239 lives, representing dozens of families who were thrust into this agonizing, seemingly endless wait for answers that to this day haven't fully arrived. This human element sits at the absolute center of the entire puzzle. So let's get into it. Part 1. Into the Silent Sky. Okay, look at how tightly compressed this timeline is. The plane departs Kuala Lumpur, and for 38 minutes, it's just another standard red-eye flight. But then we hit the 40-minute mark. This is the exact moment everything changes. The aircraft's transponder, which is that absolutely vital piece of tech that broadcasts the plane's identity and location to civilian air traffic control, is switched off. It just goes entirely dark, vanishes from civilian screens. But here's the crazy part. It doesn't drop out of the sky. As you can see, military radar continues to track it as an unidentified aircraft for almost another hour. It shows the plane making a sharp turn, flying back across Malaysia, changing altitude, and heading out over the Strait of Malacca before flying out of range entirely. Which leaves investigators, and, well, all of us, staring at this massive question. Where did it go? Once it left the range of that military radar northwest of Penang Island, the map was just empty. Imagine being an air traffic controller in those early days, looking at thousands of miles of open air and ocean with literally zero indication of where a massive commercial airliner had gone. Chapter 2. The Phantom Signals. Now here is where the investigation hits its first massive twist. The plane kept flying. Even though the transponder and the main communication systems were totally dark, the aircraft's satellite system was still secretly active in the background. It was making these brief automatic handshakes or pings with a satellite high above the Earth. These automated check-ins proved a harrowing reality. The aircraft didn't just crash immediately after disappearing from military radar. No, it flew on, in total silence, for several more hours, basically ghosting through the night sky. And those phantom signals created a massive geographical dilemma. By analyzing the angle of those handshakes, investigators figured out the plane had to be on one of two massive arcs. The northern arc stretched way up into Central Asia. But think about it, a giant Boeing 777 flying over multiple sovereign nations without triggering a single military radar alarm? Highly, highly improbable. So it was ruled out. That left the southern arc, a path stretching deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean. It was the only terrifyingly logical path remaining, and it pointed straight toward one of the most hostile, unsearchable environments on the planet. Part 3. The most expensive search. The sheer scale and expense of this oceanic search is just staggering. From 2014 to 2018, you had this multi-nation coalition using deep-sea sonar to map tens of thousands of square miles of empty, mountainous seafloor. We're talking miles beneath the surface. And despite all of that effort, and even a renewed deep-sea search using the latest tech spanning 2025 and 2026, it yielded absolutely no results. The ocean essentially swallowed it whole. But there was one major breakthrough. In July of 2015, nearly a year and a half after the disappearance, a piece of wing debris called a flaperon washed up on the beaches of Reunion Island, way off the coast of Madagascar. Finally, tangible physical proof. Dozens more pieces were eventually found scattered across African coastlines later on. But this emotional discovery was a real double-edged sword. On one hand, it proved beyond a doubt that the plane had tragically crashed into the ocean. But on the other hand, because the debris had been drifting on complex ocean currents for over a year, it maddeningly obscured the exact location of the main wreckage. Chapter 4: Theories in the Dark. So let's talk about the theories, treating these strictly as open, unproven possibilities. First up, mechanical or electrical failure. Could a catastrophic fire or a massive system malfunction have knocked out the communications? It's entirely possible. However, investigators have noted that this theory really struggles to fully explain the aircraft's subsequent behavior. Those deliberate seeming turns and altitude changes tracked by the military radar, they just don't typically align with an uncrewed, malfunctioning plane flying aimlessly. Then there is the theory of deliberate human action. The official 2018 investigative report actually concluded that the plane's controls were likely manipulated on purpose to take it off its planned course. The sharp turns strongly suggest human input, but I want to be extremely clear here. Investigators were utterly unable to determine who was responsible or why. No individual's guilt has ever been officially established, so we have to view this as a conclusion about the mechanics of the flight path, not an indictment of any specific person. We also have to mention hijacking. Some researchers have brought up the possibility of an outside party somehow gaining control of the aircraft, but again, there is zero concrete evidence to confirm this. No group has ever claimed responsibility, and no evidence of a breach was ever found. These all just remain open theories, circling in the dark, waiting for that one piece of evidence that could finally illuminate the truth. Finally, Part 5: An Ongoing Mystery. Today, out of sheer desperation and ingenuity, scientists are actually turning to marine biology for answers. It's fascinating. When that wing debris was recovered, it was covered in tiny ocean barnacles. So scientists are now analyzing the chemical makeup of those barnacle shells. By understanding the specific water temperatures and conditions those shells grew in, they're trying to trace the ocean currents backward. They are literally using the biology of tiny sea creatures to estimate a potential crash origin point for a massive Boeing 777. It's brilliant science for sure, but it also highlights just how far we have to go to solve this. Because the harsh reality is this: after more than a decade, despite the most expensive search in human history, despite the renewed efforts in 2025 and 2026, despite barnacle chemistry and advanced satellite math, the main wreckage has never been found. The families of the 239 people on board continue to push for answers, enduring an agonizing wait that most of us can't even begin to fathom. The Malaysian government remains committed if new evidence emerges, but right now, the plane remains totally lost. Which leaves us with this final haunting thought: what secrets is the ocean still hiding? MH370 vanished into the sky, but the answers are buried somewhere in the dark, crushing depths of the sea. It really forces us to realize that even in our hyper-connected, technologically advanced modern age, the Earth is still vast enough to keep a secret this massive. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.